What if Anakin mastered Makashi after losing his arm to Dooku? Let's explore the depths of it in the video. The medical equipment hums softly as Anakin lies in his bed. Though the medical droid says he's stable and expected to pull through, what does that mean? It won't bring his arm back. His thoughts race back to the duel on Geonosis. Count Dooku's blade flashed like a streak of lightning. Even though he was almost 3 times Anakin's age, Count Dooku moved like a man in his 20s. Anakin fought with all his strength, skill, and every ounce of raw power he could summon, but none was enough. The door slides open and a medical droid appears to check on his vitals. He barely hears their words. Instead, his eyes linger on the machines. Because of that, he doesn't realize Obi-Wan is there until he speaks out.
Anakin, Dooku is one of the most skilled duelists the Order has ever produced, and you're still young. There's no shame in losing to someone like him. Anakin, you were brave. You did everything you could. No one could ask more of you.
I did everything, and it wasn't enough. You almost lost your life because I couldn't beat him.
Anakin, it's not your job to worry about me. You're my Padawan. Your job is to learn, and there is still much you can learn.
But Anakin's thoughts are elsewhere. Dooku's power wasn't just in his age or experience. It was in his technique. The way he moved was beyond anything he'd ever seen. A different kind of power. Once his new mechanical arm is attached, Anakin doesn't let himself sit still, as once he is discharged, he goes to Obi-Wan with a request. He wants to learn Makashi. The Jedi Knight is taken off guard by this request, but Anakin says that if he still has much to learn, he can start there. Obi-Wan frowns, but sees no reason to refuse him, especially when he sees the determination in Anakin's eyes. Unfortunately, it is easier said than done, since Makashi is considered outdated and is rarely practiced among Jedi anymore who favor techniques that deal with multiple opponents. This means that there are no masters who can train him. None of this discourages Anakin, who learns through records and holocrons. Over the next several weeks, Anakin immerses himself in ancient texts and training manuals, scouring the archives for anything on Makashi. He practices alone in the empty training rooms of the temple, mimicking the poses and forms he sees in the images. His progress is slow, frustratingly so, but he refuses to give up. Master Sunube offers some guidance, as he practiced Makashi in his youth, correcting Anakin's footwork and showing him how to hold his blade and shift his stances. However, the greatest help comes from 2 Jedi Masters. Kit Fisto's easy smile helps put Anakin at ease, but his wisdom is even more valuable. Although a master of Shi Cho, his experience in this supposed basic lightsaber form proves useful. He shows Anakin the importance of adaptability and flow, the same thing that allowed him to turn this simple style into a deadly technique.
Makashi is all about precision, but precision without fluidity is just stiffness. You have to let the Force guide your movements, not force them into place.
To demonstrate, he moves in a whirlwind of movements, as if fighting multiple foes in different directions. He shifts directions to face them, but each movement seems natural and never leaves him open. The other addition is more surprising, but a welcome one: Mace Windu. As the creator of his technique, Mace highlights the importance of the philosophical.
Makashi, like Vapad, demands control. It's not just about mastering the blade, it's about mastering yourself. Anger, frustration, impatience, these will unbalance you.
With their combined guidance, the progress shows. His movements become sharper and more deliberate, but Anakin is still unused to the quick thrusts of this fighting style, and he injures several fellow Jedi in his training. Though minor, it rattles Anakin. Kit and Mace seize the moment to reinforce the importance of discipline. While effective, it is also deadly. Thankfully, he does not need to show nearly as much restraint on the battlefield. During the earlier days of the Clone Wars, Anakin distinguishes himself as a general and a warrior. This allows the Jedi Council to put more responsibility on him to lead the war effort. One of these missions is to capture a bounty hunter under the employment of the CIS. Eager to put this new training to the test, Anakin pursues the bounty hunter through the crowded city streets. The sight of their lightsabers is enough to cause citizens to scatter. She ducks into an alley, hoping to lose Anakin, but instead runs into a dead end. The bounty hunter whirls around and pulls out a pair of vibro swords, laced with cortosis. She unleashes a quick series of strikes aimed low, but Anakin twists his lightsaber and parries the attack before kicking her back. Anakin can see the fear in her eyes. All he needs is one more move to disarm her. But the strike lands wrong. Instead of knocking the blade from the bounty hunter's hands, Anakin ends up driving it into her chest. The woman gasps, eyes wide with shock, and collapses. Anakin freezes, the glow of his blade still illuminating the lifeless body on the ground. His stomach twists into a knot. Soon enough, the Republic forces arrive and take the body away. He stares at the hologram of Kit Fisto and Mace.
I miscalculated. I didn't mean to.
You didn't mean to, but you did. This is what we've been warning you about, Anakin. Makashi is a lethal form. Without control, it becomes more dangerous than the enemy you're fighting.
I thought I had control. I thought I could handle it.
You're learning, Anakin. Mistakes will happen. Unfortunately, this was a rather costly mistake. One thing is clear. You still require training.
The incident haunts him, driving him back into the training halls with renewed focus. He doesn't just practice the movements of Makashi, he studies its philosophy, its weaknesses, and its limitations, trying to figure out how to compensate for it and prevent future mistakes. He begins blending it with elements of Xian, Form 5, adapting his technique to make him more versatile. Xian's defensive stances and ability to deflect blaster fire complement the precision and elegance of Makashi. This helps him better shift through the stances and react to situations. But it's more than just the techniques. As Anakin trains, he can still see that woman's eyes, and this motivates him to work harder. He meditates more, something he had always struggled with before, and spends hours reflecting on the balance between power and restraint. Slowly, he starts to change. The fire that drives his ambitions still burns, but it is tempered now. His transformation doesn't go unnoticed. During a sparring session, Kit Fisto watches as Anakin calmly deflects a flurry of attacks from a training partner, his movements fluid and controlled. Kit Fisto is quick to compliment him, praising him for his efforts to learn about this form. Even Mace cannot help but change his tune. While he remains as stern as ever, his voice loses its edge, and even smiles from time to time when he sees Anakin successfully disarm an opponent or overcome a challenge. With the lessons Anakin learns here, he takes it all onto the battlefield, where Anakin becomes a force of nature throughout the war. The aggressive slashes of Xian allows Anakin to protect himself in open battle while cutting through hordes of battle droids. Meanwhile, Makashi allows him to deal with skillful opponents, whether they are dark acolytes, bounty hunters, or enemy generals. But it isn't the same aggression and recklessness that Anakin still brings to the battlefield. While he is still bold and unpredictable, the moves are carefully planned and make him even deadlier on the battlefield. One person who learns this is Dooku. Anakin and the Count clash several times throughout the war, and while the Sith Lord still has the advantage, the tide starts to shift. During the first clash, it was barely a challenge for Dooku to beat Anakin. However, in the span of a few years, that gap begins to close. Each time they clash, Dooku can feel his growing strength and expertise in the form. His attacks become more precise, while his defenses grow stronger. While Dooku's form remains perfect, his lack of stamina begins to show, and while Anakin never defeats him, it may be only a matter of time. Their latest clash on Naboo, where Dooku was trying to turn the Gungans against their masters, was particularly troubling. Their fight lasted much longer, and Dooku began to tire. By the end, the Count was very much feeling his age. It was only thanks to his Magna Guards that he was able to triumph. Now, as he sits back in the Theed Palace and prepares himself, he grips his lightsaber tightly. His goal is not to defeat Anakin, but simply to scare him. This was all part of a conspiracy in which Obi-Wan posed as a bounty hunter to infiltrate Count Dooku's bounty hunter team, which was planning to kidnap the Chancellor. Anakin walks alongside Palpatine, listening to him talk about how he intends to wrap up his visit to Naboo. He can't help but nod along as Palpatine questions why the Jedi didn't tell him. They insisted it was because they did not want to leave anything to chance. But as Anakin criticizes them for their lack of trust and their willingness to traumatize him and Ahsoka, this seems to get through to them. Even Mace Windu offers an apology for all this, acknowledging their mistakes. Suddenly, the door opens and reveals Dooku. For a moment, Anakin is stunned. The Count smiles and readies his lightsaber. Then his instincts kick in as he pushes Palpatine behind him and hears the unmistakable hum of approaching Magna Guards. Two of them emerge from behind a set of pillars, their electrostaffs crackling with energy. Anakin darts forward, his movements swift and precise as he rushes to the closest one, his lightsaber clashing against its staff. His Makashi style shines through as his lightsaber cuts through the narrow gaps in their defenses. The first droid crumbles before it can fully react. The second lunges at him, but Anakin pivots smoothly, his blade slicing through its midsection in one clean motion. The wreckage falls to the ground with a metallic thud, and Dooku raises to his feet and advances towards him, his lightsaber leveled at his chest. Anakin's expression remains calm as he gets into a fighting stance and prepares to face him. Suddenly, Dooku makes the first move, his movements sliding forward as he rushes towards Anakin. Rather than advance to meet him, Anakin blocks, catching each strike before throwing aside a low stab. Then he counters with a set of overhead slashes that break Dooku's momentum. Anakin pushes down on one of the attacks, forcing him to defend. Energy flashes across the room as their lightsabers lock. Suddenly, Anakin twists and pushes the Count against the wall. Dooku reaches out with the Force and hurls a set of chairs at him. Anakin leaps over the first one and slashes apart the second just as Dooku rushes at him with a downward stab. He slides past the attack and grabs his arm, directing it towards the table. Once it is buried there, Anakin returns the favor and hurls the plates and cutlery. His eyes widen as the Sith Lord tries to block these attacks, throwing them aside, though a few shards from the shattered plates pierce his skin. He yanks his lightsaber out just as Anakin comes at him again. The blow sends him stumbling back, carrying the duel to the hallways. Anakin meets him blow for blow, his movements equally fluid, his stamina allowing him to keep up with the older Sith Lord. Their battle flows through the palace, with Palpatine following closely, but careful not to interrupt. Anakin presses forward, forcing Dooku to retreat step by step. He's relentless, his superior strength and stamina beginning to show as Dooku's movements grow slightly slower, his defense less precise, and his age and his injuries catch up with him. Dooku attempts a riposte, his crimson blade darting toward Anakin's shoulder. It sears skin, but Anakin is already moving forward and counters with another blow that sends him staggering to the ground.
Tired, Dooku? Maybe want to sit down for a second? Perhaps, but do not mistake your newfound skill for true mastery.
But Dooku's taunt rings hollow. Anakin continues his assault, keeping Dooku on the defensive. With each clash, Anakin pushes the older man further back until they reach the Grand Throne Room. The final blow comes as Anakin disarms Dooku with a quick strike that sends the Sith Lord's lightsaber skittering across the floor. Dooku collapses to his knees, breathing heavily, his composure shattered.
Good, Anakin. Very good. Now, do what must be done. He's too dangerous to be kept alive.
Anakin freezes, his lightsaber poised above Dooku. His breathing is heavy, his mind racing. He remembers the lessons of Mace and Kit, the warnings about the dangers of aggression and recklessness. He looks down at Dooku, who meets his gaze with a wary resignation.
No, not like this. A Jedi doesn't kill an unarmed opponent.
Palpatine's expression hardens for a brief moment, before he forces a smile. Dooku doesn't even bother to hide his surprise just as the guards appear, accompanied by Ahsoka, who arrests Dooku.
Honorable as always, young Skywalker.
Back on Coruscant, Anakin stands before the Jedi Council, who all stare at him in silence.
Anakin Skywalker, your actions on Naboo have demonstrated not only your skill, but your growth as a Jedi. You showed restraint when many would have faltered. This is the discipline we have long sought in you.
Hardships you have faced, some caused by the Jedi Council. Blind to our mistakes, we are not. But faith in you, we now have. Belief in you, we do.
That is why we have decided to grant you the rank of Master. What? Masters? I can't believe this. However, we wish to emphasize that we are not doing this because we must or because we feel bad. We do this because you have earned it, and you have our trust.
The words settle over Anakin like a wave of warmth. For the first time, he feels truly seen, truly valued. He can only bow and offer his thanks to them. With Dooku now in custody, they have struck a serious blow against the CIS and are in a position to potentially win the war. None realize this more than Dooku, but more importantly, his capture shows him just how precarious his position is. His master did not simply allow his capture, but advocated for his execution. He now realizes that he is in a position to be replaced by his master. Dooku begins taking action to try and protect himself. First of all, he insists on being detained by the Jedi instead of the Republic forces, saying that he will cooperate fully if only he is held in the Jedi Temple. The request is rather odd and ruffles a few feathers, especially among those who believe that Dooku is in no position to negotiate. Palpatine is among them and insists that Dooku must be executed to send a message to the other CIS leaders and to show them continuing this fight is futile. However, the Jedi fully back Anakin's position of not harming Dooku and keeping him under guard. Anakin himself recalls how Chancellor Palpatine tried to get him to kill Dooku and doesn't protest when the Jedi take him under their custody. Once he is safe within the Jedi Temple, Dooku begins to go off on how there is a Sith Lord within the Senate, one who is truly controlling things. At first, the Jedi are in disbelief and dismiss this as a desperate lie meant to cause discord and confusion within the Republic. But the more he talks, the more it begins to make sense. Dooku reminds them that this war has granted the government more and more power, things that would have been unthinkable anywhere else. He reminds them that the biggest beneficiary is Palpatine, and how he can effectively rule by decree. When they ask if Palpatine is truly the Sith Lord, the Count confirms it. But this is a bold accusation, and Dooku's testimony alone would not be enough to condemn him. However, Dooku confirms that he has hidden documents stored on Sereno of their correspondences that can prove his claims. However, as he is in prison, one of the Jedi will need to retrieve it. To everyone's surprise, Anakin volunteers to retrieve them. Although he doesn't say anything, something about Palpatine's words get to him. Why would the Chancellor be so eager to execute someone unless he was hiding something? The thought continues to bug him even days later. Although it is a small slip-up, the Chancellor seems unusually bloodthirsty. Why would someone want someone else dead so badly unless they had something to hide? But as he departs, another figure sneaks into the Jedi Temple in the dead of night. The creature slips through the air vents of the temple, crawling right over the heads of the Jedi guards and making its way to the detention facility where it begins to reform. Hundreds of worm-like creatures tremble out of the vents like a mass and reform itself. It shifts and straightens, with a bit of armor and weapons appearing and taking the shape of Dirge. Somewhere above him, the explosives he planted above rattle the temple, sending Jedi scrambling to their posts. Dooku's eyes widen as he stares at Dirge, and uses the Force to try and contact Obi-Wan, just as the bounty hunter smashes into the control console. The Jedi was joining the others to investigate the explosion when he senses the tingle in his body. Turning at his heel, Obi-Wan runs off and is joined by Mace and Kit Fisto. They arrive in the detention facility just as Dirge pulls Dooku from the ruins of the prison cell. He holds him by his tunic and pulls him close.
You're too late. The Jedi are already on Sereno.
Dirge growls and lifts a buzzsaw weapon to his face. As he holds it up to Dooku's throat, Obi-Wan clenches his fist and crushes it, sending the blade flying into the ceiling. Dirge turns to face him, throwing Dooku aside and sweeps his arm just as Obi-Wan slides under his attack and slices his arm off. With his other arm, Dirge pulls out a blaster and fires at Mace and Kit, who scatter and rush towards him. Seeing the trio rush toward him, Dirge pulls out a spiked mace and chain. He sweeps it around, sending rubble flying. Kit moves to a sprint and continues running towards him, while Mace slides under the attack. He unleashes a series of quick jabs into his stomach that sends the bounty hunter reeling. Kit Fisto then leaps up and slices his lightsaber across his eyes. Dirge hisses as Mace and Obi-Wan use the Force to throw him against the wall. But his arms are already reforming, and once they are connected, he unleashes a burst of fire that sends the trio scattering. Mace tries to redirect the fire towards the ceiling, where the plates turn red hot.
We need to end this quickly.
Kit Fisto nods and leaps over an attack. He sprints onto the outstretched hand and somersaults above him. Landing on the ground, he heads over to the weapons locker. Meanwhile, Obi-Wan keeps him occupied and gets in close. His lightsaber flashes against his arms and sides while avoiding the lashing tentacles. Mace soon rips out the heated plates from the ceiling and hurls them towards Dirge. Obi-Wan leaps over it as it slashes through Dirge's waist. Suddenly, Kit Fisto comes back with a flamethrower canister. He drives it into Dirge's exposed belly and ignites it. The resulting explosion shakes the chamber. Dirge lets out a guttural roar as the flames engulf him, his body convulsing violently before collapsing in a heap. the Jedi step back, wary of any signs of regeneration. Before his body fully disintegrates, Dirge activates a hidden transmitter in his armor that informs Palpatine of this development. Anakin steps off the ship. His movements are purposeful as he looks at Dooku's palace. Beside him, Ahsoka glances at him and nods. Their lightsabers are ready as they hurry towards Dooku's library.
We need to be quick.
I'm with you, Master. Let's find those documents.
Inside the estate, the halls are eerily quiet, illuminated only by the faint glow of moonlight through the tall windows. The only sound comes from the mechanical hum of droid guards who patrol the facility. As they reach the central library, they find what they came for, a collection of encrypted files detailing communications between Dooku and his Sith master. Ahsoka begins downloading the data onto a portable device when the sound of slow footsteps echo through the chamber. Palpatine steps into the light, his face calm, but his eyes gleaming with dark intent.
Anakin, you've done well to make it this far, but I must admit, I didn't expect you to be so persistent. However, I am impressed. You have come so far and become stronger than I could have imagined.
So it is you, the Sith Lord we've been hunting, hiding in plain sight, manipulating the Republic and the Jedi.
Don't you see, Anakin? The Jedi have held you back, stifled your potential, and the Republic is weak. They are doomed and no longer fit to rule. Join me, and together we can bring true peace to the galaxy.
I've heard enough.
Palpatine's expression darkens as he raises his hands, unleashing a torrent of Force lightning. Anakin deflects it with his blade as Ahsoka leaps into action, her sabers flashing in the dim light. Her moves are quick and agile, but Palpatine is faster. He checks all of these attacks along with a follow-up kick. The Emperor catches this and throws her aside just as Anakin rushes forward. The Jedi slashes across his waist and then tries to stab at him. The aggressive dueling technique serves Anakin well as Palpatine shifts to the defensive. However, none of Anakin's moves land too, as the Chancellor draws upon the power of the dark side. This lends him aid and allows him to quicken his pace and draw strength. There is none of the stamina draining like with Dooku. This becomes clear as Anakin feels the Chancellor's shoulder ram into him, followed by a quick kick. He rights himself and blocks another attack just as Ahsoka joins him. Her movements shift the momentum and allow the two to meet his attack. Their movements are practically in sync and strike hard. Palpatine hurls debris with the Force, attempting to separate them, but Ahsoka leaps over them or shatters them apart, clearing a path for Anakin. His Makashi technique allows him to match Palpatine's speed, while Ahsoka's agility keeps her one step ahead of the Sith's attacks. But as she draws near, Palpatine unleashes another burst of lightning to check her advance. She tries to block the attack, but the force of it throws her back and sends her stumbling into the ground. Seeing her fall, Anakin screams out and rushes towards him. His lightsaber clashes with Palpatine's. He holds Anakin at his back and twists, trying to swing at him, forcing Anakin to leap back.
You see how weak the Jedi are. Join me and I can show you how to make the most of your powers.
Anakin's response is another wide slash that prevents Palpatine from approaching. Sighing, he lifts up some of the books and starts to hurl them towards Anakin. He sidesteps through these attacks and slashes them apart as he advances closer. His eyes burn brightly as he prepares to rush Palpatine. The Sith Lord raises his lightsaber as Anakin pulls back into a slash. But at the last second, the Jedi feints and shifts stances, moving into a stab that drives into Palpatine's stomach. His eyes widen and he gasps, staring down at the glowing blade in his chest before falling over. With the information that Dooku provided, there is more than enough evidence to condemn Palpatine as a Sith Lord. But with him dead, that is a moot point, and instead, elections are held, which allows Padme to win and begin making peace with the CIS. As the war was started due to the influence of the Sith, they see no reason to continue it, and instead begin making preparations for peace. For his part in ending the war, Anakin's position as Master is confirmed, and he is hailed a hero by the Jedi. When the war comes to an end, Anakin is invited to teach a new generation of Jedi in using Makashi. That's our theory. The Star Wars universe is a galaxy filled with exciting stories and possibilities, and we love exploring them. If you want to accompany us on this journey to a galaxy far, far away, then please like, share, and subscribe to our channel.